slipping through our hands.
I was on a fast-moving train that I couldn't get off of, and I couldn't slow down. And it was taking me someplace I didn't want to go. And I was scared.
I'm a bit wounded me, goddammit.
So, if I don't make it, just wish me luck, okay?
Once I entered the country, I found myself in the position of being a platoon leader for a platoon of seasoned soldiers who had been there some time before me. And the big question was not about the politics of the war, but was I going to be an effective leader and not get them hurt?
Saying, O Lord, to rescue me, let all be put to shame and confusion who seek to snatch away my life. Deign, O Lord, to rescue me. Amen.
This whole notion of a domino theory was very real to me, that sooner or later, if the communists weren't stopped in Vietnam, sooner or later they'd get to our country. That was not, for me and for a great many people, that was not an abstraction. That's what we were fighting for in Vietnam. What do I think of it now? I mean, it's you know, it was absurd.
Vietnam, 1965. Early moments in the single most critical event of the 1960s. Within 3 short years, this faraway war would touch off a rebellion in America. Young political activists, already concerned with issues like civil rights and free speech, would confront the government directly. At the same time, members of the counterculture would turn their backs on American society. And young blacks trapped in inner-city ghettos would rebel against an America that seemingly cared more about freedom in Southeast Asia than freedom at home. Together, these rebels would challenge America's fundamental assumptions about democracy and patriotism, and create a climate of revolution unknown in America since the Civil War. In 1964, America was optimistic about its future. Democrat Lyndon Baines Johnson was about to be elected president by one of the biggest landslides in U.S. history, thanks to a coalition of voters that included Democrats and moderate Republicans. America was united behind a liberal dream, using national laws and federal funds to solve social problems like poverty and prejudice.
Most Americans want a decent home in a decent neighborhood for all, and so do I. Most Americans want an education for every child to the limit of his ability, and so do I.
Johnson's victory convinced him the time had come to finally deliver on his party's most idealistic promise, an all-out war on poverty. He developed plans for what he called the Great Society.
The Great Society rests on abundance and liberty for all. It demands an end to poverty and racial injustice, to which we're totally committed in our time.
Sweeping in scope. And he put them into action with one innovative social program after another. Head Start, Medicare, VISTA, student loans, an Office of Economic Opportunity, the National Endowment for the Arts. He imagined a better society, which would include everyone.
Which is supposedly the center of anti-Johnson, here's of people who would think Johnson is a big, gross Southerner who picks dogs up by his ears and shows off his appendicitis scar, and isn't he just too vulgar? We didn't feel that way at all. We absolutely worshipped Johnson at the beginning. And the very fact that he was a Texan and vulgar and all that was part of our worship of him. here was this force of nature. Here was this huge personage that had come to redeem what we believed in. So the betrayal of Vietnam was all the more awful and severe because of how much faith and love, really, we invested in Lyndon Johnson.
The Vietnam War threatened to drain away time, energy, and money needed for Great Society programs. But Johnson and many others of his generation believed there was no choice, that it was necessary to send U.S. troops to thwart a dangerous and advancing enemy: international communism.
The aim of the communists is to establish control over all of Vietnam, and after that, over all of Southeast Asia.
Most Americans feared communist expansion. But from the beginning, the war was distant and confusing to the generation that would have to do most of the fighting.
I don't know. I know why we're there, but I don't know if that's if it's the right decision. But since it is, I'll do my best to whatever has to be done to stop this.
If I were handed a gun and told to go shoot Vietnamese, North Vietnamese, Viet Cong, whoever, that this would be to me an immoral action. I don't think I could bring myself to do it.
I don't want to go to Vietnam because I don't want to get killed. If I have to, I will. It works out that way.
Vietnam was colliding with the baby boom. In 1965, the first baby boomers were turning 19, old enough to be drafted, but according to the laws of the time, not yet old enough to vote. There were only a few ways to avoid the draft legally. One was to go to college. That meant college campuses were becoming safe havens for students who would avoid or oppose the war. Although the majority of students supported the action in Vietnam, small groups began mobilizing against it. At the University of Michigan, these students and some of their professors decided to use their skills to teach what they saw as the facts of the situation: that America had involved itself wrongly in another country's civil war. Borrowing techniques they learned in the civil rights movement, they called their rally a teach-in.
Demonstration was called a teach-in because the idea originated with a group of university professors. The consensus of those who taught in from 8 o'clock last evening until 7:30 this morning is simply that the United States must cease the escalation in Vietnam, negotiate a settlement, and/or pull out.
It was the innocent birth of a new political movement.
Nobody had seen anything like it. The whole campus was one mass of people, and they stayed all night. And there was one speech after the other. There were workshops and groups. Telegrams came in, telephones came in from all over the country. From Madison, from Berkeley, from Columbia, from Harvard, you name it. All of the campuses that later on became known as, student movement campuses. They said, we will have a teach-in too. This is great. We'll have another one. We'll organize it, and so on. And out of that experience came the sense that, yes, you can change the country. If you do it at the right moment, if you do it in the right way, in one night, you can change the country, because that was the reality. The next day, the mood in the country was no longer the same.